All right, there we go, class. So today we're talking about the beginning of week 11 and our biodiversity lesson. Okay, so what we're talking about here is biodiversity and students being able to define biodiversity, identify local plant species, and calculate species abundance. So this is leading into our next lab. We have some things we need to be able to calculate, and students will utilize and compare common surveying techniques to do that. Okay, so looking ahead, we're going to have an assignment here looking at doing calculations. So we're going to have some notes around that. Okay, so first of all, what is biodiversity? It's the number of species of plants, animals, and microorganisms, and the enormous diversity of genes in these species. The different ecosystems on the planet, such as deserts, rainforests, and coral reefs, are all part of the biologically diverse Earth. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning here. We're looking at the number of species of different organisms. So when it comes time to do that assignment, we are trying to calculate the biodiversity. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do is count up the number of different species in a community, and that is the species richness. Okay, so the species richness is the number of different species in a community, and the relative abundance is going to be a percentage. It's going to be the number of individuals in a species divided by the total number of individuals. Okay, so when we're looking at that, if we see three different types of species, so the species richness is three. There's three different plants. Okay, so we have grass and flowers and trees. Okay, so maybe we have three different things here. All right, so the 4 plants, so this adds up to 16 total species and 3 different types. Okay, so we have the total number and the different types. So we take the number of these individuals and we divide it by the total, and that gives us our relative abundance. And then we take the next number and divide by the same total, and that gives us our next abundance. And finally, we keep going, number of individuals from that species divided by the total, give us our relative abundance. Okay, so that is what you're going to be doing as you work your way through. You take your number of individuals, you divide by the total, and that will give you your relative abundance. So why is biodiversity important? Okay, biodiversity boosts ecosystems productivity, where each species, no matter how small, have an important role to play. And the greater the species diversity ensures natural sustainability for all life forms. And a healthy ecosystem can better withstand and recover from a variety of disasters. So one we'll be talking about in a few weeks and is very relevant to this part of the world is forest fires. So if a forest fire comes through an area, then if you have a lot of different species, then some of the different plants or animals can survive the fire. And some of them will have specific seeds set up. So after the fire passes through, those seeds will naturally germinate and sprout. And some animals will be able to travel back into that area having left it during the fire. So the more different species that are involved, the more likely they can, as an ecosystem, survive and recover from that disaster. Okay, so some of the things are going to be like great big pine trees. Okay, some of the things are going to be very small, like mushrooms or bacteria or insects. The more different species we have, the more they can each fulfill their own role within the carbon cycle or the nitrogen cycle. We need all those pieces to be present. Okay, so it's also important, the biodiversity is also important for our own human health and our economy. Okay, so if you look at this 2009 report, we see that pharmaceuticals like medicine make up a $640 billion economy based on deriving the genetic resources from different ecosystems. Okay, now it's important to note that the Amazon rainforest has the greatest genetic diversity, so they are the greatest source for this genetic material to make medicines out of. Okay, biotechnology was the next sector with another $70 billion from public companies alone. And they also get genetic material such as enzymes and microorganisms from different ecosystems and from that diversity within there. Okay, then we have agricultural seeds. Remember, part of a healthy ecosystem is it can survive disasters. So if we have plants that are good at surviving droughts or other natural disasters, then we have better farm plants as well. Okay, so that's another $30 billion industry driving those genetic resources. And then finally, we have all of the personal care, the makeup, the healthcare, the lotions, all the botanical food and beverage industries. Okay, those each come down to a 22 billion plus 12 billion plus 31 billion for all those different components of food, personal care, and supplements. Okay, amazingly how big the supplement market is compared to food. Okay, and again, some of these products are derived from genetic resources, especially if they're marketing as natural and they're harvested directly from natural or pre-existing ecosystems. Okay, so now as scientists, we are not necessarily concerned with these numbers. This is going to be the engineers and the businesses are worried about this. But before the engineers and businesses can go through this money-making process, they need to know what is the diversity, what is the genetic resources that are out there. And to do that, they're going to turn to the scientists. So one way scientists can measure biodiversity is through a transect line. Okay, so the transect line is literally a line, like a piece of string. They put down in one place and you spread it all, straight line all across this region. And then you measure and you count all the different species that are present. Okay, so here we see 100 meters worth of string stretching from a lake up into the forest. Okay, and then you take the transect line, you unroll it along the gradient, along the ground wherever you find, and you do continuous sampling where you count and document the species touching the line and you record along the entire length of the line. Or instead of continuous sampling, you can do systematic sampling where you look at the presence or absence of a species at a marked point and recorded. So you might just mark a few points along the line to see what happens as a sampling method. Okay, that's one way to do it. I don't want, as an assignment for our class, to give you 100 meters of string and have to find 100 meters of ground to stretch out on. Okay, if you're next to a school or a softball field, you might be able to find this and do it, but that's, again, not the direction we're going to specifically go for our next lab. What we are going to do is quadrants. Okay, so here we see you could do a quadrant system in the ocean on a reef. Okay, we could also do a quadrant system in your front yard or at the park or on the sidewalk. Anywhere we can put down a square frame that is divided up into smaller squares, and then based on that sample area, we can then find the population within each, and you can, again, identify them, count them, and total all those different species. Okay, so that is where we're going to be going, is making our own quadrants. Okay, but right now we have to be ready to do the math. Okay, so someone else did their own quadrant survey where they found a region. Okay, it looks like a fairly big region of area. They took 1 square of it, and then they started counting out how many of these trees do we have, and then how many of the next tree. And they counted a total of 16 trees, 4 of each kind. So they have 4 different kinds of trees, 4 of each kind of tree for a relative abundance of 25%. Okay, here they took another quadrant of maybe another part of the mountain, and they see that the one species is more present and some of the other species are less present. Okay, still 4 different kinds of trees are present though, so the species richness is still 4, but the relative abundance has changed dramatically. Okay, so when we go to do this, you're going to add up all your numbers. You're going to take the individual number and divide it by the total, and then get your percentage. Okay, you're going to go through all those. And then what I really want to see in your assignment is what is your evidence and reasoning for the question of which of these 3 communities is the most diverse. Okay, all right, so that finishes up the project for today. There was no class on Veterans Day, so I'll be seeing all of you later.